Greetings and welcome to another excellent chess game. So, came up first game of the morning, played this game, and it was really interesting. Not a really long game, but it was complicated. I had to think more in the very beginning of the game than normal. But I'm going to show you how I use my dad's rules to help simplify the process. So, let's go get it. So, my opponent is from Iran. So, Iran versus USA. He plays e4. I'm playing Karo Khan. So classic center, classic response. And then he plays the fantasy variation. And I had to think, oh man, what's the response to this? It's like the response involves e5. But I couldn't remember. Did I take it and then play e5 because I need to make this weak? There's tactical reasons to take first. So take first was what I played and is the correct move. And then e5. And the whole point is that this revolves around some tactics that he's got problems. When black plays e5, he's threatening to play queen h4 check and queen takes e4. This is one of the main drawbacks of the fantasy variation where he weakens his f2 square. That's really the short version. So he plays that knight f3, stopping this queen check, which is good. And then I was thinking, man, what in the heck? I can't do like a lot of stuff, okay? Can't play pawn takes. It's not very good. And I checked after the game. The book moves bishop to e6, and it gets really complicated. That move didn't seem natural to me. So first rule is that, the first one of my dad's rules I'm using is play what you see, okay? And I didn't see bishop to e6, and then you have to figure out, it's not good for a 10-minute game. What I saw was, look, let me pin this knight and reduce the pressure on e5. He wants to take pawn takes pawn. These two pawns don't really mean more than one. It destroys his structure if he does that. So I said, okay, we're going to go bishop g4, play what you see. All right. And his response, and he was thinking as well, because it's not obvious stuff. Now he's got a trap. Bishop c4 and knight f3. He's threatening at some point, if I get crazy, to do knight g5, or bishop takes pawn, king takes, knight takes e5, forking king and getting the bishop back. So I see this problem of bishop takes f7, which is compounded because my e5 square is less defended. And I could play maybe knight d7 or bishop to d6, but I thought, you know what? I'm not going to play this other queen h4 check idea, so I went f6 for solidity. Which is, like I said, in a 10-minute game, man, don't have time to figure this stuff out. You can't spend a minute a move. Okay, it's really not a good idea, and I've already spent too much time trying to get more solid. And I thought castling wasn't that helpful to him. I said, you know what, I'm going to simplify and get my pawn back and keep my structure. So trade the bishop for the knight. Rook takes, queen takes check. Now I'm threatening queen takes free bishop. So he has to take me with his queen, which is clearly the best move. Pawn takes queen, obviously the best move. Nothing else is possible. Now, this rook is oddly placed. Not horrible, just odd. Okay, one of the things I have, if you see this, I have this idea of playing knight to e5. So he plays c3 to undercut my d-pawn. Well, what's he trying to do to me? My dad's rule number 2, pawn takes pawn. I got to stop it. Now, it's a mistake to play d takes c3. Find the mistakes and then don't make them, okay? This is a positional mistake because he's going to have a killer development with the knight retakes the pawn on c. This knight takes c3 is a free development for him, and he's doing better than me already. So I was like, no, I'm going to defend my pawn with a threat. The counter threat defense. He can't play pawn takes pawn because bishop takes pawn check is inconvenient for him and is not helping his development. All right. So right now he's got one developed piece more than myself. So I can't play pawn takes c3, knight takes, because he has 3 developed pieces. I would have had 0. You're asking for trouble. So don't be stupid. All right. Or as my dad would say, don't be fancy. So just play the straightforward move here. All right, pawn takes check. He still only has 1 piece developed more than myself. He goes king to the corner. Now, development is what we don't have, but remember, I have this awesome square for my knight. So the obvious move is, I want to play knight d7 and knight e5. Is it okay? And the answer is, yes, it's okay. So now my threat is simply knight to e5. Now there's a forking here, the rook on f3 and the bishop on c4. I'm not trying to cheap shot fork him. This is just positionally the move where this knight is less attackable. So this is primarily positional idea, more so than the cheap shot tactic. But it is a cheap shot tactic, which he completely overlooks. And that happens. And I was like, dude, I'm just going to play this. You know, he did not follow my dad's rule. What's he trying to do to me? Because I'm trying to play this. He probably should have played like bishop to f4 to cut it down. And now I could play stuff like knight e7, knight g6, and overpower this square with 2 knights versus 1 defender that could stop it. So, you know, mistakes were made. You know, that's the way it happened to him. He just overlooked the basic what's he trying to do to me rule. That rule is the key rule. So, you know, at this point, his only move that is playable is bishop back to e2, because I'm forking him for an exchange, or I take a free bishop. He could play b3 as well. But I think structurally, you know, bishop back, knight takes rook, bishop takes, and at least he's got, you know, ironclad control here, and he can move the bishop as he needs to. Or he could play, if he wants to, g takes f3 to give this pawn support, and play an f4 if he needs to down the road. Either way, that's really all he can do, and he's already 3-6. He's down 1 pawn, and he's going to be down a pawn and an exchange. It's not good. So I got lucky there. Now, let's go back and look at the variation here of the book move. It's really wild. This is the move. And I looked at this and it's like, dude, what is this? He's going to play knight takes. All right? He can play pawn takes. But that move is kind of inferior, because I can simply play, actually I can't simply do that. Yeah, knight d7. If he plays pawn takes, knight d7, I'm threatening to play knight takes, queen checks, forking. So, you know, I thought, what if he plays knight e5? And this is what prevents knight e5 to a degree. It gets, you know, real ugly, because I'm just going to play queen takes e4. He can't play, this move loses. So it loses to the direct queen takes e4 check, forking the rook and the king. So he can't play that move. So he has to play this move. And then the obvious follow-up here, queen takes. So this knight takes e5 for him looks really questionable. Now the computer was looking at it as if it wasn't that horrible, but I think it's terrible. You know, pawn takes. And through, you know, analysis, it looks like knight to d7 is the best move. Again, we're just going to try and work on this tactically. Knight takes e5, knight takes, queen checks, and get the knight back. So the weakness here of these 2 pawns, they really can't be defended very well. But on the other hand, in a 10-minute game, it's short, and you're less likely to play the best move, because it takes time to find these. This is already getting a little more complicated right out of the ending, right out of the opening. That's what makes a fantasy variation kind of dangerous in a 10-minute game. But as you saw, white didn't, gain this, crazy attacking possibilities because I was aware of the variation being dangerous tactically and trying to limit the tactical nature of the opening with this move, which is technically inferior. Actually, let's go back here and do this. So it might be technically inferior, but it's simple. And in a shorter time control game, you're better off to play a simple move that you can see the general ideas from rather than getting complicated as a theoretical grandmaster, because guess what? Shocker, none of us are theoretical grandmasters. So that's really the deal. So hopefully you learn something. Don't get crazy. Don't be fancy, as my dad would say. Take care of your basic business as much as possible, even to the point where, I ended up playing the move that looks wrong is F6. It just looks wrong. But beating it is another story. It can be technically incorrect, but in a 10-minute game, anything can happen, and that thing happened. He decided to go and not be fancy, castle, which allows me to execute my plan. Now, maybe the best move here is either knight d7 or bishop to f6. I'm not 100% sure. Let's take a look at knight d7. That seems to be the normal move. And since his bar hasn't changed in his favor, this is probably the correct move. It's very, very crazy stuff. He has nasty, what do you call it? Knight g5. That's still a kind of, well, it's nasty, but I'm just going to go and bishop takes queen, so you can't even play it. And that's the key. So that covers that. Hopefully this helps you understand how to attack the problem of facing a dangerous opening that you weren't anticipating. I don't anticipate people playing fantasy version of Caro Kann, which is what this is here. But you have to be aware of these things existing and have some clue, which I had a clue, but I learned more after the game, which is what these games help you do. They help you learn things you don't know. So hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully this helps you. Make sure you tell your friends. Look forward to seeing you in one of my other killer videos like the mega trainings. They help you big time. So thanks for watching the video. And as always, like and subscribe.